Welcome back to Kickin' Crochet. Today I'm going to show you how to do a puff stitch. And the puff stitch and the bobble and the popcorn, they're all kind of similar. And in fact, sometimes it's really hard because you can find a bunch of different tutorials online that show how to do a puff stitch, and a lot of them show you how to do it differently. So this is the way that I do a puff stitch. One of my stitch books does it this way, another one does it a different way. It varies. So if you're doing a puff stitch, when you buy a pattern, usually it will tell you how to do the puff stitch in the pattern, how that designer is doing it. But this is kind of the basic principle about it. Alright. So I'm using Caron Simply Soft yarn and a size H crochet hook for this tutorial, like normal. So if I was going to make this whole square, I would start with a chain of 21. For the tutorial, I'm just going to do a smaller chain, but just for your information, if you want to make this particular square, it's 21 across and then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 rows to make. It's approximately 6 inches by 6 inches for this square. Okay, so to do the puff stitch in this pattern, you need an odd number for your chain, and we are starting with a regular chain, not a foundation chain for this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'll do 9. Okay, so now I'm going to pull up a loop. I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook in the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, in the same stitch, pull up a loop, and then one more time. And depending on the pattern you're doing, you might do that more or fewer times. Then yarn over, pull through all of it, and then it's called closing the puff. So I'm going to do a single, or a chain. So it's got a little stitch on the top to work into. Now, puff stitches are pretty wide, so typically I will skip a stitch. If you don't skip a stitch, it makes the puffs kind of pop out of your work. But if you're doing puffs all the way across, then you probably need to skip stitches. So for the next stitch, I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook in the chain that I want to work into, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, back through the same stitch and pull up a loop, one more time, yarn over, same stitch and pull up a loop. I'm going to yarn over, pull through all the loops on my hook, and then close it with a chain. This is also, if you want to learn the Jasmine Stitch, it's a great foundation because it uses like a variation on puffs to do the Jasmine Stitch. Okay, yarn over, I'm skipping a chain, I'm going in the next one, pull up a loop. Also, the higher you pull up your loops, the taller your puffs will be. Yarn over, one more, so I'm doing 3 times through each stitch. Pull through all the loops and close the puff. So I did a chain of 9, so I'm going to end up with 5 puffs. Whatever size chain you do, if you're doing this, you're going to end up with half that number of puffs plus 1. So if I did 11, I would end up with 5, well not half the even number. So 11 stitches would be half of 10 plus 1. So I'd be having 6 puffs. Alright, skip a chain and in the next one, I guess half rounding up. So half of 11 is 5.5, so we'll round up to 6. Some people also might have you do smaller puffs, only going through a couple, 1, 2 times. Some designers might have you go through the same stitch like 5 times to make a really fat puff. It really depends on the pattern and the designer, but they're all going to follow the same basic principle. So those are puff stitches, and when I turn, I'm going to do it just like I did on the end here. I'm going to pull up a loop and turn around. Then I'll work into the same stitch by yarning over and going in the same stitch, pulling up a loop, and then doing that 2 more times. And then finishing it. Okay, and then I'll just work back along this. I'm not going in the chain in between, I'm going in the top of the puff. Top of the puff 3 times and close it. Yarn over in the puff, pull up a loop, yarn over in the puff, pull up a loop, yarn over, go in the puff, and pull up a loop, and then close the puff. Just going to finish off this row. And if you do this straight puff stitches with nothing else in between them, they make kind of like a V-ish braidy pattern thing. So you can see this here, how they kind of angle. When you go down one way, they angle one way, and when you come back, they angle the other way, because they always kind of shift just a little bit, depending on which way the top of the stitch is. So it can make a kind of cool, fun little pattern. So, like I said, this one was 21 stitches by 10 rows. You can have fun with this, experiment, and I'd love to see your work. Don't forget to subscribe to get the next video, which is going to be on shells.